listener production.
Automotive commentator and journalist Greg Rust, and this is Rusty's Garage. I'm in New Zealand for this one, on the North Island's beautiful Coromandel Peninsula. You could be forgiven for thinking what kind of motoring or motorsport event takes place there. Well, each year, for nearly a decade now, there's been a Goodwood-style meeting called the Leadfoot Festival. Competitors race all kinds of machines up a long driveway, a hill climb, and it attracts some fantastic cars, bikes, and big names like Paul Radisich, the quietly spoken former touring car racer who became a household name during the famed 2-litre super touring era. He won the World Cup not once, but twice. His nephew now races, and Paul's dad competed too. The family's love for it was a huge influence.
It was all about family to start with, because who was going to fix the car and who was going to get it out there, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, my dad being Formula 5, former Formula 5000 driver and touring car driver. I mean, we used to go on picnics to Bay Park rather than going to the beach, and Frank had a Mazda rotary and a March 72 single-seater, and at the age of 8 and 10 I was out round Bay Park pounding around this 300 horsepower monster of a thing, so I had no option. I was always going to go motor racing. Our whole family, if we didn't sell cars, we fixed them or raced them, so the interest was there, and the support. The typical motor racing family put everything on the line. Had the family business, went bankrupt twice, just to keep me the end of the day, to keep me going. And when I think back now, I mean, yeah, tough times, but hey, I managed to keep it going. He recovered. Family recovered, and he got to a stage where he said, "Okay, Paul, I really can't help you anymore. I've got to rebuild finances, and you got to go and do it yourself." And I think in some ways that was probably the best thing he could have done for me. And I was determined to have a motor racing career, and I started chasing. I said, look, I'm not going to find the money, so I'm going to find the people that do, the teams that do, the car owners, and I set about hitting the world to do that, and that's how I managed to keep going.
That's remarkable, the financial stress that would have caused on the family and things like that. Many people would just throw the towel in, but to do that twice and to keep at it, mate, that's for all of you to stay passionate about it is tremendous.
Yeah, look, absolutely. It's that's, I guess, the motor racing drug, and it's look, yeah, the other side, it's crippled a lot of people, but we're able to get through it and recover and keep going, and everybody today's is great. So yeah, that's I guess it's what passion can do, and I guess there's a fine line between getting somewhere and not getting somewhere. There's been so many brilliant young drivers, particularly from New Zealand, that haven't been able to make that next step because of those financial restraints. At some point you have to say enough's enough, and I've got to join the real world and get a real job. And luckily for me, I didn't want to get a real job, and I just kept at it. And when I think back now, I think, Jesus, how it was nearly a 20-year apprenticeship before I had a full-time career and made it on the international scene. So it was tough going, but I guess that's what makes you what you are, today.
In addition to your dad, I mean, New Zealand has had its share of legendary drivers over the time. The late Bruce McLaren, Denny Holm, Chris Amon. I mean, the list is. There's plenty of them. In addition to your dad, were there other influences like them? Were there guys that were sort of a source of inspiration in some respects?
Well, I think, at that stage, I mean, they were at their top of the career when I was quite young.
Yes.
But those three guys kept New Zealand motorsport, in lights for decades, didn't they? And even today, it's still inspiring people. With Bruce McLaren, what he did, and Denny. I think Denny, for me, I had the opportunity to race with him twice, and he helped me initially to try and find funding for me to get to Formula 3. So the Bear had quite a bit to do, and I had a bit to do with him as well. And he was a grumpy guy, but underneath it, he had a heart of gold, and he was really, as far as my inspiration was my dad, but Denny being a world champion and having him stand behind me in my early career was awesome.
He died at Bathurst quite sadly. Did that affect you at the time? What were the feelings at the time?
Oh, it was devastating. It was. I guess we all consoled ourselves to say, well, he went the way that he would have liked to have gone, but that's probably not true. But yeah, it affected everybody, and for sure. My memories with him and spending time with him and Greta at Lake Rotowiti and his Can-Am boat that he had and all the toys that it was of course really sad but we managed to deal with it.
This is a bit of a long-winded tale, and I don't know if I have the details right, so you might have to correct me here. In 2006, you did a celebrity speedway event with Steve Williams, former caddy for Tiger Woods, legendary New Zealand sportsman. Greg Murphy took part, among others. Was that kind of like 6 degrees of separation? Because I think you may have learnt some of your early driving on the Williams family driveway in Auckland in a Fiat or something. Is there any truth to that story, or is that not quite right?
Well, it's possible. It's too far. I can't remember. My first car was a Fiat 500 Bambina. Wow. And it was the only car I could see over the steering wheel.
And how much? Where did you find it? Where did you get it?
I was one of Frank's cars from the car yard, and we used to. It's possible with Steve Williams' driveway, but I do remember we had a workshop. Frank had a garage, and every Friday night they clean the floors with kerosene, and then they'd just go away and leave it. So when it was empty, I'd get this little Bambina in the indoor workshop, and I'd be doing these 360s around inside the workshop. So when they come, all the black tire marks were. So,
who did this?
Yeah, of course they did. They didn't if they looked too far. But going to the story, the Steve Williams thing, funny story. So we drove the stock car, and I thought, oh my God, what the heck? Because every time I hit the wall, it was like, I thought, it was, it's like running your fingernails down the blackboard,
It was like a no rules thing too, wasn't it?
And anyway, I went out and won the first race, right? And I thought, this is quite cool, I like this. So the next time, of course, I didn't realise on stock cars, there was a bit like pack racing. They all gang up. So all of a sudden,
a target.
All of a sudden, I was a target. So some guy come out of the middle of the track on the grass and just smashed me in the side. And I thought, oh my God! And all of a sudden, Tiger Woods I'm stuck in the fence, and Tiger Woods is coming straight for me, right? And the deal was you put your arm out the window and wave, right? Yoo-hoo! And I put my arm out the window, but he didn't see me, and he slammed me straight in the side, and I broke my ribs.
No way!
Yeah, I broke my ribs, and I hopped out and I said, oh, Tiger, what did you do that for, Oh, mate, I didn't realise you had broken rib. Bloody golf players, geez, they're aggressive. Yeah. And anyway, it was, the other side of that story is the following weekend with a broken rib, I had to go and race at Phillip Island. Can you imagine racing at Phillip Island with a broken rib?
So you guys always try and hide that stuff too, don't you?
Well, we did, but I finished on the podium that weekend. But gee, I couldn't even get on the podium. I was in so much pain. So stock cars is definitely a no-go, and doing it again with Steve Williams is a no-go too. And if he invites Tiger back, it's a triple no-go.
What was the first racing experience for you? When did you get behind the wheel in a competitive sense, even just to sample something, whether it was a go-kart or whatever, and what impact did that have on you?
Well, I started in motocross, and we looked at go-karts, and at that particular stage they were quite unreliable and wasn't that strong, but the motocross scene was big in New Zealand, and I started racing from about 7, and I won all the junior motocross stuff, and so I raced motorbikes up until I was about 15, and then the car bug got hold of me, and I thought, hey, this is much easier. And the first competitive car race was with my brother, my younger brother. I was 17 and he was 14, and we took Mum's Mazda 323 and entered into the Benson and Hedges.
Did she know about this?
Well, of course not. She always get in the car and go, why is the car bouncing along the road? Because Mum had 4 square tyres. But anyway, we grabbed the car. Yes, we did tell her, and we had a bit of support from Mazda, and they helped us prepare the car with Frank. And every day after school, we'd sneak out to Pukekohe and go round, and so Chris and I, my brother, I think we finished second or third in our first. It was a 500 kilometre race. So that was really the first time, and then from there it was like, hey, I really like this. What should we do, Dad?
And therefore, like him, I guess, in many respects. I mean, he did saloon car stuff as well, but the open wheel direction really started to head you down that path, didn't it? Yeah,
it did. We did that, and then I did another following year, another race with teamed up with my dad in a Toyota Truno. A bit like a Celica, but only 1600, and we sort of threatened all the big V8s, and I managed to pass. There was a hero at the time, Leo Leonard, and then people thought, oh, maybe the kid's got some talent. And I had a call from Gary Pedersen and Dave McMillan, and they had a Nissan-powered Ralt RT1, and he said, would you like to drive it? And I said, of course I would. So they dragged me out for the Grand Prix. I think I was 18. And unfortunately, we didn't make the race. We qualified and didn't make the race. The engine decided to expire, so we didn't make the race. So otherwise, I would have been the youngest Grand Prix driver. Yeah, but from there on, it was that's where it started, and then it just went on and on and on from that point. And we sort of raced Atlantics and. It just kept me sharp for the while everybody was hibernating in the northern hemisphere. I was still racing down here, and I just set my journeys in America, Japan, Europe, UK. Just what the racing I did here, I just run to a budget, and it enabled me to stay alive when I was traveling around the world trying to be stand on the sideline reserve driver, and that's how I managed to keep myself going.
You mentioned the New Zealand Grand Prix there. For any Kiwi competitor, even now, it is still to win that, to have that on the CV remains a huge thing, mate. How much did that mean to you?
Oh, it was huge because, my dad had tried to win it for many, many years, and he spent most of his races down here sitting on the sideline with mechanical issues, as the way it was in those days. So he was big, not only inspiration, but he kept the engine going. He built all the engines for the car, mechanicked it. Yes, we had other mechanics come in and work with it, but he was right behind it. So it wasn't me winning, it was him winning it too. So it was pretty special.
Very, and the fact that you got to share a car, I mean, to do all those things together, and he's here today, even and following you, isn't he?
Yeah, look, he's the biggest supporter, and you only have to mention motor racing, doesn't matter, he's there. Yeah, yes. So the interest has always been there, and that'll never change.
You went to Europe, courtesy of a Driver to Europe scheme that you won, and you got to race against the likes of Damon Hill and people like that, didn't you?
Well, the New Zealand, it really sounded better than what it was. It was just a title we tried to generate some funds from, and we tried to get a national lottery behind it, and unfortunately that failed. So once again, Murray Taylor, who was a Kiwi, running Formula 3 team in '84, and I went there and had pole for my first race. So that inspired everybody to try and keep the oily rag thing going, So I managed to do half a dozen races before I think Murray realised there was no money, and the cheque was in the post. So yeah, it was, we missed a couple of years, and then had a film industry through the courtesy of Rob Whitehouse, who managed to put together some funding for a movie, and there was a legitimate tax break in there. We managed to raise some funds for David Oxton to run the Andy Rouse Sierra down here in the Wellington Street Race and all that sort of stuff, and for me to go and do a season in Formula 3. So, and I teamed up with Damon Hill, and we set about doing Formula 3. Unfortunately, the route was a little outclassed to the Reynard for that year, and but I was just pleased to be able to get back and pick up where I left off in British Formula 3, which Formula, all the drivers who'd done well in Formula 3 had gone to Formula 1, so it was the stepping stone to Formula 1, which was always the aim.
There was a chapter in America as well that I wanted to get to with Indy Lights and other things, but clearly before we get to your touring car chapter, open wheels was as you say, the dream, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I didn't really look at at anything else. I just wanted to go to Formula 1, and that was it. But there was a crossroad, like everything, and I'd started racing touring cars in Australia with Brocky and Johnson and Bill Bryce, who was down here, and I found it really easy, and the doors were opening, and then I had to make a decision. Was I going to keep trying to go down and become an Indy car driver or Indy Lights driver, the single seater, or do I switch and go to touring cars? And that was where the crossroads. I had to make a decision what I wanted to do.
A little noisy there a moment ago, so we've moved for this next chapter inside the car, fittingly. This is
just enough room for our groceries, and you and I, Rusty, we're rubbing shoulders together going, would you like to come for a ride? Yeah.
We were talking before about your ultimate move to touring cars. Firstly, let's talk about your debut at Bathurst, 1988 in a BMW. How did that whole deal come together?
It was Bill Bryce, and it was a little 325 BMW, so it was pretty in class 2. And Bill, because I'd done a lot of single-seater racing, and he'd sponsored me because he was part of Lockwood Homes, and so we had a good relationship. And he said, "Oh, why don't you come over and drive the BM?" So. Absolutely. So, but because I think I spent most of the race looking in the mirror, because, the speed difference from class 2 to 1 was Dick charging around and the Falcon, and, that particular era, those cars were pretty big. So this thing was struggling to get up the hills, but it would go like hell over the top. I remember looking in the mirror going, should I pull over as I go through the top and down? I thought, I'll hang into it. And sure enough, I was quick down the hill, but of course, slow going down the straights and up the hill. But great experience. I think we finished runner-up in that class 2, I think, even though we had some mechanical issues. But it gave me the taste of Bathurst, and I thought, yeah, this is a cool place.
Everyone talks about it as a place of legend, Kiwis and Aussies. But to steer it like your father had done, as we said earlier in the podcast, I mean, that's must have been, quite eye-opening and special at the same time.
It was, because you got to remember that I'd been to Bathurst as a kid, when I was sort of 8 and to probably 13. We've always been backwards and forwards. So, I'd gone from being in the pits, running around in the gravel pits in those days, and jumping under the car, and, being a sort of a semi-mechanic, to also racing out there was, it's like, I knew the place, but didn't know the track. So, it's quite amazing how just being in the atmosphere, you soak it all up, and you obviously listen to things, and, I'd probably learnt a hell of a lot about Bathurst before I got there. Even, in those days, I think there used to be more accidents when the track was closed, with the spectators falling down the bank, hammered out of their heads, driving the track at night. So I remember it was always the hot gossip was how many cars crashed during the night, So, as you know, those days are well gone.
only a couple of years later, 1990, you partner with Jeff Allen in a Shell Ford Sierra, and you finish on the podium, second in the great race. I mean, you talk about heading then toward a touring car chapter in your life. I mean, clearly that was the sort of stuff that convinced you, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, and people around me, I guess as a driver you're always convinced. It's just getting the right place, the right time, and all the stars to align, you know. So, yeah, I mean, that was a race where Jeff and I were quick all day. The main car, Dick's car, and John had broken down, and we were leading it right at the top. Right at the top. We stopped for the last stop, and Dick wanted to get into the car, which was great. But unfortunately, he hadn't tried to get in the car all week, and the runner, because I was on a runner, jammed, and he tried for 12 or 15 seconds to get into the car.
The seat wouldn't move far enough back for him.
No, far enough back for him. No, and of course, you know, luckily I was suited up, ready to go, and he couldn't get in, so had to get out. I jumped in, so you know, we lost 20 odd seconds, and we lost the race by 12. So in hindsight, if Dick had got in the car, he would have been able to, I'd say we would have won that race for sure. And if we hadn't lost the time, we would have won it as well, because you know we had a bit of a cushion on Percy, and we lost it all in that change. So you know, that's just the way it goes. And as I say, if Dick had got in the car, we would have won that race. Yeah.
Earlier in the series, I spoke with Glenn Seaton about the development of the Sierra and the significant impact that Australia and even New Zealand made on the car, particularly towards the end of the racing life of the RS 500 Cosworth. To drive one of those things at Bathurst, what was that like?
The sheer acceleration it's one of those things, you know, and you put your foot down and you've got so much power and your head pushes back into the headrest and you go, oh, that's fantastic. And that's what it was like every lap, you know. But the corners were a different thing, because it had a lot of lag, and the more boost you gave it, the bigger the lag was. So you had to keep the momentum through the corner. Remember, I think we were running on, small tyres, you know, 17-inch or whatever they were. They're pretty tiny. I think might even been smaller than that. Yeah. So you had to keep the momentum through the car, put your foot flat mid-corner, and hope like hell that the car was straight when it all come in. So there was a technique to driving them, but I tell you, they were an awesome car to drive, you know. And by the time they become reliable, well developed. You know, in the early days, their turbos were a bit of an issue, but you know, Dick's car, and of course I drove, you know, the best cars. I drove Dick's cars, Peter's cars, and you know, they were at that stage they were well sorted and great kits to drive.
You talked about Peter Brock there a moment ago, and in the phase where Brock raced a mobile Sierra, that kind of came about in connection with, or working with, Andy Rouse to begin with, and that was when you would ultimately go super touring. He was the man that you would drive for in the Ford Mondeo, wasn't he?
Yeah, and you know, it's all about stars aligning, right? So Alan Gower was the big mover for me in that, and it had all come about racing Bill Bryce's M3. Brocky was driving an M3 as well at Pukekohe, and I passed him. And he said to Alan, you better go and talk to that little shit and get him in the car. So Alan come up to me and said, hey, you little shit, do you want to have a drive for us next year? And I said, no, get stuffed. I don't want to drive for you and Peter. I'm kidding. Of course. Yeah, I said, hey, I'd love to. And that's where it all began, really. So Peter and I shared the Nissan Mobile. We won the Nissan Mobile Series the following year. And then I drove at Bathurst with the team with Bradley. Jones, yeah. Bradley, let's have a chat. It was fantastic. I've never laughed so much in all my life. You know, he was actually half serious back then. He thought he was going to Formula One too. So we teamed up, and I think he crashed the car, which was kind of good. It brought him down a peg or two. But Andy was in the team and drove with Peter, and we struck up a relationship, and I nurtured it, and da-da-da, and then all of a sudden he got the Ford contract, and Alan Gower went to work for Peter Brock, and he said, hey, why don't you give the little shit a go? And that's how it all came about, you know. And it was a Mondeo, it was a world car, didn't need to be a British driver or European. They had the budget, and they said, hey, let's put Paul in the car and give them a go, and that's how it all came about.
They were a magic car. We'll focus on that just for a moment because it was such a highlight of your career. Where were you when you drove the Mondeo Super Tourer for the first time, and what feeling did it give you?
Yeah, well, it was slow. It was in Andy decided he was going to go rear-wheel drive with the cars, and so here's this. You've just got a Ford contract. They give me an RS 500 to drive on the road, the new Escort, and I just thought I'd made it. There was my name on the side of the car. No other. I didn't have to share it with anybody, and all of a sudden we get there and the car was slow. And we tested with the group, and we were about half a second off last, both Andy and I. The good part was Andy was too, because Andy was like Peter Brock in England.
Multi-time British touring car champion, running the outfit at the time to beat, really.
Absolutely, yeah. He was God in touring cars. So I was only a few tenths behind him, so it gave me some encouragement, but we were last. So we kept persevering with it. We went to another test, still last. So tried some other things, didn't work, and then all of a sudden we missed 3, I think maybe 4 races trying to develop the Mondeo for the 93 season, and then Ford just said, "Hey Andy, do you want the contract or not? You better make this thing go." So Andy threw pretty much everything he had from the Toyota development into the front of the Mondeo and made a front-wheel drive. And we come out of Pembury. Now, keep in mind, I've never driven front-wheel drive in my life. So, and Andy had done the testing and got everything going. So I went to Pembury, just got my car on that day, never driven front-wheel drive, qualified, towards the back, but come through in the race and finished 10th, I think. So that was my first experience with it. And then we went to the British Grand Prix with the next one, and I qualified on the second row and finished on the podium. And from that on, we started, it was another 4 or 5 races, and I won a race and all those sorts of things that had developed. And we ended up finishing 3rd in the championship after missing 4 rounds, so ifs and buts again, So then you talk about stars aligning, it all aligned. I had everything lined, and it was done. I was standing on the sidelines, and literally standing on the sidelines,
For enthusiasts that are listening, trying to detect the sound of that car while we were chatting there a moment ago, it's a Ferrari 488 Challenge that's just pulled up in front of Paul in the line here, getting ready to do the run up the hill climb at Leadfoot Challenge. You said about finishing 3rd in the championship, in the British Touring Car Championship. I mean, golden era, some unbelievable manufacturers that came through, in the early to mid and even late 90s. Their Formula One style development started to filter through in the cars in many ways. But although you finished 3rd in the championship that year in 93, one of the real massive ticks, mate, and still for me is a big one, was to win the first of 2 World Cups in touring car racing. I mean, that was just mighty.
Yeah, it was, and look, at one stage we couldn't get in. We weren't entered for the race. Neither had because New Zealand was there was no other drivers from New Zealand in there. It was a team race, and
couldn't they find it on the Atlas?
Yeah, and once again, Alan Gowd moved from running Andy Rouse engineering team to running the Toka series. And so Alan pulled all the right strings, and literally at the last hour, we got the okay from the FIA to be able to run in that event. So I didn't know if I was running in that event until pretty much the Friday. So over to Monza we went, never been to Monza before.
Rotary powered Escort. I think they call it the Mazscort, but anyway, that's another story. So you go to Monza.
So we go to Monza, and I think there was 20 current world Formula One drivers there, and the best cream of Scafie was there, and everybody from around the world who'd driven touring cars or hadn't was in the field. There was about Alistair McRae. He's really worried about this car. Shouldn't be. Went out the practice pole. I mean, the Mondeo I was on form. I won a whole lot of races in Britain. I was the guy to beat, and as it turned out, I was the guy to beat in the world. So on pole, by reason, I think Tarquini and Larini was right in the Alpha. Can you imagine beating the Alphas on an Italian track? Man, they were really annoyed, you know. So off we went for two. We did two, whatever they were, pretty long races. One was wet, one was dry. I won them both and won the World Cup. So all of a sudden I went from obscurity to being the best driver in the world in touring cars.
What reaction did that have back home here in New Zealand?
Oh, it was huge. I had streets named after me. I had cars that were, it was a whole series of cars. A Radisich car was built by Ford.
Don't play that down. The Ford Telstar Radisich, they made 200 of them, didn't they? Little, what are we trying to, I'm trying to think, had Michelin tyres, Bilstein shocks maybe. You actually had a bit of, it wasn't just in a badge sense, you had a bit of development in it, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. Louise Teasdale and Gary Jackson were big movers within Ford, and they were keen on motor racing, and it all, plus in those days New Zealand was they could do things down here. They were a production line of cars, so special colour was done, the aesthetics inside, signed steering wheels, bigger wheels. I played a bit with the suspension, and there was more, like it was over 1,000 of them built in the end, so they they managed to clear out what was the Telstar was sort of not a great car, and by the time we finished and turned into the Radisich Telstar, it was actually a mighty little car. Yeah,
you've made it in life when you get a car named after you, I reckon.
So look, at that stage, I'd come here, people running down the road after me for autographs. And of course everything was live, or not live on TV, was broadcast on TV. And Murray Walker, Radisich, and so everyone's calling me Radisich, which is fine. They can call me what they want. But so and I tell you, around the world, didn't matter if I come here, went to South Africa, through Europe, Australia. People knew me as British touring car driver, and it was. I reckon it took about 20 years for that to really die away.
It was mega, and you talk about Murray Walker. I can't impersonate him very well, but it was Paul Radisich.
And he's off.
But there was a story of legend going around at the time that someone in the family had perhaps tried to gently let him know that wasn't the correct way. I mean, he's a legend. You can't correct Murray Walker, but is that true? Did someone try and gently let him know that that's not how you say your surname?
It did, but I figured when I produced a whole lot of T-shirts with Radisich written on it, and they sold like hotcakes, so it didn't really bother me at all.
So you go back to back. In 94, you win the World Cup again in the Mondeo. You were recently reunited with one of the World Cup winning cars too, because there's this great... in New Zealand, on a per capita basis, the love for motorsport here is phenomenal, and there is a lot of great old cars in this country. So you got to drive it again recently, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, and look, it's like time stood still. The cars, it was a beautiful little car to drive, and it still is. So I brought back some great memories, and had little dice with Stephen Richards, and showed them old cars can still be competitive. You
don't need the big arm muscles now, though, do you? I think it's got power steering these days.
Yeah, it had power. Poor old, when we brought that car out for Pukekohe and Wellington, it didn't have power steering, and poor Glenn Seaton shared the drive with me, and he literally lasted 2 or 3 laps, and he was looking for the door handles to get out. It was a beast of a thing without power steering, torque steer, but because I drove it so much and drove, you've got to remember we had cars in all parts of the world, and Andy sent me out to test all of them, so I was in a car, if not once or twice a week, so I didn't notice it as much, as someone who'd never driven front-wheel drive would.
magic sounding car. It was at a point in time too where sequential shifting in touring car or saloon car racing really it went that direction, and you know, it seemed from the broadcast like people were fairly friendly away from the circuit, but man, they were animals. That was fierce racing once you got on track, wasn't it?
Yeah, look, it's, I think people, thought you could we'd hit each other and didn't really matter, but it got really serious towards the end. I mean, the money...
How serious?
Oh, well, everyone needed a lawyer at the track. So, the manufacturers were deadly serious about winning it because it was world exposure. And, then you had the likes of Williams coming in and TWR and, Ray Malek. And, there were Formula One teams that were spending big money and turning these touring cars into single-seater cars,
What kind of budget?
They were saying around to sort of 10 to 15 million pound mark.
Per year?
Per year, yeah. When you looked at development on diff, it was fully electronic. There was 2 or 3 million pound of development in just the diff. So it was getting out of hand. And at the end of the day, that's what killed super touring.
You would go for the bulk of your time there, driving for Ford, but there was a brief stint with Peugeot as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, there was. It was after a number of years. The promise was, next year, and it just never came. And then the decision that Ford were making, they were getting later and later, and you couldn't develop a car if you started building it towards the end of the year. You could just about forget about it. It needed to be done the year before, so the Ford couldn't commit to a team, and it was just, and I just sort of thought, well, look, it's time to move on and try something else. Peugeot, the car was just horrible, but the deal was the following year they were going to take all the French equipment and run it as a French car, which was a beautiful car. It was winning everything in Europe. So I figured one more year of pain for something that could be really good.
It looked long term.
Yeah, it did. And then unfortunately at the end of the year Peugeot decided to pull out of racing, so that was the end of that.
Now, before we conclude this British touring car chapter, I want to talk about that road car you mentioned before, because that was a sexy road car that they gave you. You and your wife, Patricia, had an apartment in the UK there, and I think you were able to park it by this sort of area that had quite a tall wall, and it looked hidden or protected. But that did not stop the thieves, did it? What happened?
Well, look, that was just one car that got signed. You got to remember, at the time, the brand new car, this Escort Cosworth, big rear wing,
gorgeous car.
Enthusiasts will know what I'm talking about. All the spoilers and there's a few stories about that car I can tell about Alan Gow, which I should. But anyway, I remember going to the supermarket. I just had a plain white. I thought I had black ones and bright blue ones, and I thought, no, I'm just going to get a plain white one. And I went to supermarket and left and come back also, and where's the car? Gone. So that was the first one. The second one, they sort of hidden behind a door where we lived in an apartment, and I come out one day and I opened the door and I couldn't lock it. I thought, that's really strange, but didn't think too much of it. And then a couple of days after, I come out from the apartment, look into the parking space, and it was gone. And the annoying thing was that was the last RS 500 made, and after I'd driven it, they were going to put it in the museum. So I had to make the call to head office in Ford. Say, that purpley, bright coloured, RS 500 you gave me, yeah. Yeah, sorry, but it's stolen. And I always got the feeling I think because it was the last one, I'd probably put it in a container and send it back to New Zealand or somewhere, But
in truth, it was never found. Is that right?
No, I think there was a lot. This thing was probably broken up and taken somewhere in Europe, but who knows? But they were a popular car, and a few stories. I'll tell you the other story with the 500. We're going down the motorway, flat out, and I had Alan Gow with me, and he said he's hitting all the airbag stuff, as Alan does, and he said, what happens if we put it in a reverse? And all of a sudden he grabbed the gear lever and it went boom. So,
Another call to Ford.
So Alan said, not very strong reverse gear, is it? so we took I had to take the car to the Ford dealer, and I said, it's got no reverse gear. Could you fix it for me? And they took it away, and then he rang me back and he said, any idea what happened here? Because there's parts everywhere. I said, I just put it in reverse and went backwards, and the thing went boom, I didn't have the guts to tell him we put it in reverse at 100 mile an hour.
More with Paul Radisich in a moment. In this series, I speak with some of the most passionate designers, collectors, riders and drivers I know, like Toby Price, who won the most gruelling race on the planet, Dakar.
You run 9,500 kilometres over the 14-day period. Most of the time you're up at least 3 o'clock in the morning to be on the bike at 4. Our biggest day we have is 1,100 kilometres in a day, so it's like that's riding a motorcycle from Brisbane to Sydney.
Listen to the full episode with the first Aussie to win the Dakar, Toby Price, here on Rusty's Garage.
In New Zealand, the racing is intense. In Australia, it's just something they sleep in.
You get an opportunity to come and drive Supercars in Australia. The V8 formula is absolutely taking off, and you get a chance to hook up with Dick Johnson again and drive in the Supercars Championship. So incredibly different machine to the Mondeos and the Peugeot that you'd been used to driving. How did the opportunity to come and race back down under all come together?
Well, I get with the Peugeot deal, I was out of contract. John Bauer decided to move
Briggs,
on.
wasn't it, I think?
Yeah, I think it was, and run as sort of his own program effectively with John. So he'd he was the relationship come to an end, and Dick's manager at the time
was it
Wayne rang me and said, what are you doing, blah blah blah. And so it's sort of here's an opportunity if you want to come down, and we said, hey, but come down at Christmas and chat about it. And the next thing was sort of a 1-year deal to come and do it. And I thought, look, it'd be nice to get out of the cold and come spend some a year in the heat. So that's what we did. And teamed up, and of course a brand new car with the AU, which was a disaster in itself. So
it weren't a great looking car. I think many fans would probably agree with that, sadly. But you were on course to win Bathurst that year, mate. And you've said earlier in the chat that ifs, buts, and maybes, that's not your style. But that really was the one that got away.
Yeah, it was. And look, it was the year of the aerodynamics were wrong in that car. It was just horrible. We couldn't get it to work. Even though we did have a pole, I think at Tasmania. And then we went to Bathurst and had a good engine, and it sort of handled reasonably well. But I'd also run the old EL at around the streets of Surface, and won all the races there. So I'd driven, because remember I hadn't driven a supercar before, and I thought, shit, this is really well balanced. If only we can get the front end, get the AU to work like the old EL. And we sort of worked hard on trying to do that, just give it a huge amount of understeer and worked our way through it. So it sort of started to understand what that car needed. Yeah, in Bathurst, we were quick all day. We led pretty much all day. The last 15 laps, literally we got a puncher. It's as simple as that. And after leading it, and by the time we come in and then trying to get into the pit with a flat tyre, scooped up a whole lot of rubbish in the radiator. But the race was over at that stage, and I handed another one to Murph. So it definitely was, without a doubt, the second one that got away anyway.
Was it tough to take, mate, in the sense that the vision? Most people will recall you out of the car on the side of the road. I think you even patted a horse or something, which is very unlike you. And you were clearly devastated, weren't you? You knew that it was. You recounted the story in 1990 before, and Dick trying to jump in and things like that. But the 99, nearly a decade later, was clearly potential to be top step.
Yeah, look, it was. But look, at the time, it was, really disappointing. But, I'd been conditioned through life. It's like, hey, there's a next year. I think it's like everything. When there is no more next year, then it becomes disappointing. So, it's another 10 years to become probably more disappointing now than what it was at the time. Just shrug your shoulders. And it was one thing about, I've always tried to do it, always give it my best shot. And at least when I get back, say, I gave it my best shot. If it's mechanical or whatever, those things happen. You have to accept that with motor racing. And I've always tried to live by that. And as long as I can, I know that I always did the best that I could do.
Those years in the Supercars Championship were highly competitive, weren't they, among all of the team? We just went through this remarkable growth, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And I've, the touring cars in Europe, I'd caught the wave, and that was dropping off. And then I went to the next, the next happening thing which was V8 Supercars, and that turned into be the most competitive touring car racing in the world as well. So I really caught the wave on the touring car side of it. But they were sort of the 2-litre cars went from, when you went testing, was rather boring, laborious, because they weren't that fast. But of course the racing was spectacular, and then you went to the V8s, and the testing was exciting, but the racing wasn't, because you had so many other factors, tyres dropping away, and just bigger cars, big heavier cars, and you were locked into one sort of line, where the smaller cars you could zip and manoeuvre around and do whatever you needed to do. So that took a bit of getting used to too,
That was my next question, because you may not remember, but in that, I don't know whether it was 99 or 2000, you actually took me for a ride at Queensland Raceway, and I can remember how fearsome you were, mate. You literally grabbed the thing by the scruff of the neck, and it must have been very different to get used to. I mean, you're a racer, you guys adapt, that's your nature, but just 180 of what the front wheel drive Mondeo was like.
Yeah, look, I think I don't feel I was always that aggressive until I went to Europe, and all of a sudden I had to wake up. And
what caused that? Why did you feel you needed to do that?
Just the nature of the racing. They were short races, and if you didn't make your move on the first couple of corners, you could find yourself stuck where you are. So you had to be on your game and fully with it from the get-go. Not that you're not, but if there was a slight gap, you had to make one, or there wasn't a gap, you had to make one. Where the supercars are not quite so much, but I think I felt I was probably aggressive, and that was me. I had to get myself up and going, and that's how that's what worked for me.
I can remember my colleague Lee Diffie running with the nickname The Rat. Now, he tells me he didn't christen you or give you that nickname. That had come about in Europe. How did that all happen, and how did you feel about it?
Well, no, it did actually start in Australia. It started with shall we call him press mogul Paul Gover, for the Sun, with
Herald Sun.
Herald Sun, yeah. So one of the big papers of Australia. So he's keen motorsport. So it sort of started them, and he decided to chat to the marketing people in Shell, because he had this great idea, as Paul does. Why don't you call him the Rat? So Ross Brody come to me, and he said, "We've got this idea. Well, what do you think?" I said, I don't, if it sells a few things, that's great. So all of a sudden, started producing merchandise with the rat on it, and Go the Rat, and the rat this, and all of a sudden it won some award for there's a rat on a hat, and all of a sudden people started buying it. But I was saying that we're also starting to win races and be competitive too, and Dick's team's got a huge following, so it didn't take long to start selling out of rat merchandise, and that's sort of how it came. Then it stuck, and then the fans really took to it, and as I say, you can call me anything, but I was making some money off it, so I was even happier.
What was Dick Johnson like as a boss? And I asked that with almost a leading question here, because you and I were at a function recently, and you shared a story about going boating with Dick Johnson and parking up, or endeavouring to park up beside him. I think at Stradbroke Island or something, wasn't it? What happened that day?
Well, look, firstly, working with Dick was great. You know, Dick tells you how it is, and that's great. And that's it's whatever you can ask for. Sometimes it was difficult for Dick because he went. I did the '99 season. It was his last season, and then he tried to settle in to be the team boss for the following year, and it was a hard transition for him, as you can appreciate. You know, with so many years of even though it was his team, you know, you get away from the team and go put your helmet on and do your stuff. So he was going through quite a big transition. You know, looking back on it now, but yeah, when I going back to your boat story, you know, Dick's always been a huge boatie, and my experience with boats was zero. So all of a sudden, I did a deal with Mustang Gary Garoni. He said, "What size boat do you want, Paul?" "Oh, well, the biggest one you've got, you know." So luckily, he didn't do that. He gave me a 32 Mustang, which is a beautiful boat. And I'd never driven it before, and I'd got my license by driving a jet ski. So Dick said, "Well, come out to Stratty and we'll, you know, have a bit of an afternoon out there." So anyway, I found Stratty, God knows how, but found it. Anyway, when I get there, Dick's got all his mates lined up on the shore. As Dick, I thought, you know, be throwing an anchor down, but no, everyone's parked on the shore. So here's this little spot that Paul has to try and back this 32 Mustang into, right? So that sounds really good, but of course, the wind's blowing one way and the current's going at 120 mile an hour the other. So, like, they knew I was, you know, I was on to hiding to nothing. So they set me up beautifully. So, okay, I'll back it in there. So I spin the thing around, you know, backwards, and of course the tide got me and the wind got me, and I managed to get it right in there. But in the last minute, the last bit of the wind got it, swung the hull around and smack straight into Dick's boat, knocking a big hole in the top of it. So you know, he was pretty quiet from there on in. I was too frightened to ask him, firstly, Dick, how much to fix your boat? And secondly, really sorry. And I think he held it against me for the rest of my time.
The podcast is about anything with an engine, so we'll just keep the boat theme going here just for a moment, because for a time you were almost neighbour to a colleague of mine, Daryl Beattie, he is mad. I don't know how you survived that period living near him. But anyway, one particular afternoon, he and I are out on his wakeboarding boat, and it runs out of fuel, and we're desperate because it's just drifting in the breeze, but we're not all that far from home, and we thought we could see that you were home, and so we rang you and said, "Hey, can you come and rescue us?" So you left your daughter asleep. good father.
Thanks, Rusty.
Jumped on. No, he's a good father. Jumps on the jet ski, and you come out to rescue us, and it was just one of those freakish, if it could have gone wrong, it went wrong moments. You turned. We threw the rope out for you to catch it, and it got sucked up by the jet ski, and next thing we're all drifting.
Mate, it's Dumb and Dumber, isn't it?
It was terrible. We had to drift to some poor random's house that we didn't know, go in and call for help. Terrible.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think with Daryl, I mean, probably alcohol poisoning was still in my system. And I still hadn't really worked out the wind and the tide thing in the boats, you see. So, I tell you what, there's so many stories like that you can't believe. But,
didn't you go down one day and he was trying to launch his, what did he have? It wasn't a gyrocopter, it was
a big fan which strapped his back.
With the parachute.
Yeah, and he's standing on his jetty with the thing going and 1,000,000 miles an hour trying to launch off from the jetty. But I think what he had to really do was go up to a big hill and jump off the hill to get it going. But that was Daryl. Man, it was fun time. Daryl's just the loveliest guy, fantastic motorbike rider, and just fantastic neighbour, other than having alcohol poisoning every other weekend.
You got to do a bit of two-wheel stuff with him at the time. You had a Harley, I think, didn't you? What was it, a V-Rod maybe?
Yeah, it was when the V-Rods first come out. Patricia, my wife, bought it for us for my 40th, and Daryl set about teaching me how to ride it. This is how you do a wheel stand. What? This is how you get sparks off the bottom of the chassis when you lean it over. So I don't think I was not brave enough to be a motorbike rider. That's for real.
Most of us aren't, mate. They're a special breed. Back to your supercars career. Let's get serious again here for a second. The hardest aspect for me in talking to you about Bathurst is the injuries. Firstly, the Team Kiwi crash in 06. What happened that day? It was brake failure, I think, wasn't it? Or what went wrong? And can you recount for us the crash that day?
No, brakes were fine. It's when I come out of the chase hip and I was going round the outside of a slower car and just misjudged it, and he moved over, touched the right wheel, and it just broke the steering arm. And just went straight into the, unfortunately for me, they've changed it now, but there was an earth bank, and it just, as you can appreciate, you're accelerating, it may not have been that high speed, maybe, 120 mile an hour, but it was straight into an earth bank, and it just, car dug in, flipped on its side, and of course my feet just went through the firewall, and broke my left ankle and shattered a few bones in there. So it wasn't too bad, but I remember with the car lying on its side, and I've got something falling inside my helmet, and I'm heavily winded, and I think, oh my God, it's fuel. Luckily it was water, but for a brief moment there, I thought, this thing's going to go up and I'm going to be a goner. So and heavily winded at the time. So look, we recovered from it. It was one of those things. I shouldn't have been on the outside, but I misjudged it. I should have given him a bit more room, but it just touched the wheel at the right angle and just shattered the steering arm.
You would rebound from that, as you say, and race with the Kellys at Bathurst, and you had success at a podium at Sandown, and then in 08, was it a stuck throttle? And that was the checkered flag, wasn't it, in some respects? What happened? Yeah,
it was. And it was. Rick Kelly and I were having great success, second at Phillip Island. Yeah, and we were really competitive. And I was enjoying the role of stepping back and actually being a co-driver, because in actual fact, my full-time racing had sort of really, I would have been just happy to continue with top teams as being a co-driver, and probably had a good another 5 years of doing that, So, practice on Saturday up over the top of McPhillamy, flat out, new set of tyres, ready to punch in something that frightened the hell out of anybody. And as I went over McPhillamy, lifted my foot off and the throttle jammed wide open. And I tried to do everything as you can do at 200, try to think about flicking the switch off, but you're talking just fractions of seconds, but clutching on the brake, but of course the momentum and everything, the car just went straight off the track and once again head on into this time a concrete wall, and the impact just shattered both my feet, broke my sternum, spinal damage, and of course rattled the skull. So it just took a long time to recover. A good couple of years, ringing in your ears and headaches and all those terrible things, let alone having, because I'd done spinal damage, it was being a cast up into my neck or lie down for 3 months. So I just took a sleeping tablet for 3 months and just lay down, and effectively woke up in 3 months and tried to learn to walk again, and hours and hours of people carry me to the swimming pool to learn how to walk and get everything working again. So it was a terrible time, not only for me but my family, and it was tough, really tough. So we got through it, and by that time I think I sort of said, and Patricia was keen for me to maybe think about taking another career, but I couldn't find one. So here I am at Leadfoot. Yeah.
Did you make the call ultimately to stop, or was there a doctor that made that call for you, or was there a hope that you would come back? And how did that? Because it's a really difficult thing. When I talk to any of you guys, it's a really difficult thing to stop, isn't it?
It is. It takes a real, some real willpower to say that's the end of it. Like Dario Franchitti, and for instance, said, "No, I've had enough." Okay, he's had an accident too, but yeah, it's a real. I think in their head you'll always go, "Well, I think I can go better. I think all those sorts of stupid things." But for me, it's. I think I could have come back and probably picked up where I left off a couple of years later, possibly, but time just goes on, and you got to find another way of supporting the family, and hence we got involved more in the business, and that's where we are today.
Let's talk about that, because it's a family business. It's automotive based. Your dad ran it for almost 30 years, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. I helped him we initially took it on as it's an oil company, and started out as a recycled oil company, and we've turned it into just a blending plant in the last 25 years. So, I helped, I was there at the day it all started. I took on the Auckland area and sold oil before I disappeared on my racing career. So, to come back, it's still there, still running, and, now I've picked up where he's left off, and he's still involved though. At 80 years old, it keeps him going every morning just to be involved in, what he started.
It's got a strong agricultural side, which is very appropriate for New Zealand, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Look, we're in every area of automotive and trucking and through to the ag sector, and we're not huge in any, but we cover the whole lot, and we're up through the islands as well. So the Aegis Oil is the name of the brand, and it means in Greek a shield of protection. And as it's turned out, we're the only company that's producing and manufacturing automotive lubricants in New Zealand. So we're really proud of that, and it'll always be a small little company, but it's still a family company.
All right, let's talk about a couple of fun things. Firstly, craziest thing that's happened to you as far as any promotional activity is concerned. I understand, I think maybe during a hot lap once, a guy proposed to a girl or something or other. Did that happen?
Yeah, that was true. Ford had a request that he wanted the husband wanted me to drive the couple around Donington at high speed, and then they would rush off and go and get married. So that's what I did. So that was pretty exciting. They were thrilled, and obviously big fans of touring cars and of Ford, the Ford brand as well. So yeah, I don't know about it's the craziest, but it's one that comes to mind straight away.
As we're sitting here in the queue with you getting ready to have a run up the hill climb, there's a couple of rotaries parked beside us. The family has had a long association with rotaries over time. You had one in an open wheeler, and you've driven several of them, haven't you?
I think I had all the range as growing up. We had RX2s, RX3s. We were sort of when my dad was running the service stations and the automotive repairs, we were sort of known as the Mazda repairer. He had a 13B and a single-seater car, so we were rotary mad. We're all deaf. That's part of the reason why.
Favourite race car of all time? Can you do that? And it's probably a hard one to answer because they're all good for different reasons, but is there one that's special to you?
Always the ones that were compared, the ones that were winning, they were always the best cars. Someone said to me, do you have fun in racing? I said, the only time I really have fun is when I'm winning, or you have the fastest car. But look, if you pick the car, all the single-seaters were great to drive, but, for me, the Mondeo, the most success, that really brought my name to the fore. It gave me a career, gave me some spending money on the weekends, and, it also gave me, the title of best touring car driver in the world.
Is there a little resto project, or has there been one in recent time in the Paul Radisich garage?
Look, we've got a whole lot of my old racing cars sitting there, so at any time I can pick up the resto if I really want to. But look, at the moment I've got one of my old Mondeos that's down in the museum at Tony Quinn's in Highland. And as a family, we've got all sorts of cars that need restoration, but no big projects at the moment.
What's your daily drive? And I think it's one that we have shared a bit of a love of. I had up until recently a Golf GTI, and I loved it. It was a couple of years old, but they're a great car. Is that your roadie?
Yeah, this is my roadie. I've gone through one engine, one gearbox, and I should really have a diesel from a fuel economy point of view, but I really enjoy driving the Volkswagen everyday car.
ask you a bit about the car that you're competing this weekend. Firstly, we're at Rod Millen's Leadfoot Festival. It is my first time here. It's up on the Coromandel, Hahe on the North Island. What he's done here is amazing, isn't it?
Look, it sure is. It really is, South Pacific Goodwood, let's put it, this event, I've been in it 2 or 3 times now, and the event has grown and grown and grown each year. And, if you think of Goodwood, this is a mini Goodwood, and I guess Rod wants to grow it to be a Goodwood. And, it's just a great atmosphere. People can come to touch and feel the cars, and, there's some real oddball stuff down here, as well as some real exciting stuff. So, it gives the fans an opportunity to come down and just be part of the whole event. It's very relaxed and just a lot of fun.
Cool hill climb up what is effectively his driveway. Big turnout of fans, all kinds of cars and motorbikes, as you say, and some stars that drive and ride them. You have something interesting this year. That's probably an understatement. So it's badged a Nissan March. We know them in this part of the world as a Nissan Micra, but this thing's got 650 horsepower.
I know, it's literally out of control. And, Glenn Hodges, who's built the car, is just an enthusiast from Hamilton. I saw this car at Hampton Downs middle of the year. He was doing a club event. I went and spoke to him, and he said, I said, is it 4-wheel drive? And he said, no, it's rear-wheel drive. And I said, it's a shame, because it would be a great little car to take to Goodwood, something interesting. And, lo and behold, within 2 months, he rang me back and said, you said it should be 4-wheel drive. It's now 4-wheel drive. so literally it's a tiny little car. It's 4-wheel drive. It's got a V6 Nissan 350 engine in the back, V6. Turns out about 650 horsepower, and literally all comes on, and it's like a switch. and the wheels are doing, it's 4-wheel drive, but I think they're just, one's driving to the right and one's driving to the left. So look, I'm really enjoying the experience, but once again, the car, it's an oddball car. It's just fits the event. It's it's interesting, and this thing's it's trying to tame me, but I'm going to tame it before the end of the weekend.
It tips its hat to World Time Attack. I mean, it's got all these overgrown wings and fairings and all sorts of aerodynamic support. You mentioned before the fact that it's 4-wheel drive, but there is no centre diff in it, is there?
No, there's not, and I think that's more people I talk to, they're it's just probably the best way that the car could be set up as far as 50-50 goes, 50-50 split. But it takes a bit of getting used to, because you just don't know where the car's going to end up. And as I said, it's got so much power, and it all comes on so quick that all of a sudden you think got it under control, but it wants to go to the left and the right. But it just takes a bit of getting used to, and I'm hoping that today, if the weather clears up a little bit, we'll be able to push it quite hard. It's got so many noises inside, it frightens the shit out of me.
Favourite piece of road that you enjoy to drive on, maybe here in New Zealand or somewhere in Europe, or racetrack? It can be your choice. What would it be?
Well, I have to. The UK, we experience a lot of road kilometres in the UK, and there's some awesome roads there too. Believe me, if you get off any of the A roads or B roads, it's. But I tell you, New Zealand, like even coming up to Hahe here, when you're not stuck behind a camper van or another car, there's some awesome roads around this country. Wherever you go, it's just, of course, you can't exceed the speed limit anymore to really enjoy them.
If you had an unlimited budget, the Grail car, the dream car for Paul Radisich, it doesn't have to be a current supercar or hypercar. It can be something from the past. What would be in the garage in that category?
Yeah, that's a tough one, Rusty. Unfortunately, road cars is you can pick any road car. but you take it to the track and it sort of turns into, you know, an average car. I mean, there's a few there, some of the Ferraris, and you know, when you get up into the Veyrons sort of aspect, but you know, that's a really hard one to answer, and the answer probably is the car that's going to win. And you know, if I put my hand on my heart and be really honest, it's even coming here. It's a lot of fun, but you have more fun when you're in the fastest car.
You've just gone 2 seconds faster than you were yesterday. Just to clarify, that's seconds, 2 seconds quicker. You still have that competitive drive in your mid-50s, mate, don't you?
I know, and it's a worry for me. As I said to you, I put my helmet on, and there's something in that helmet. It's something wrong with it. It's obviously too tight. It just flicks some sort of switch which goes, "Hey, I'm 21 again. You know, let's get to it." But you know something, it's a real problem for after, when you finish competing, you need to have something else to go to, and I have to say, I haven't found that next thing. I've tried golf, and unfortunately my running days are over and things like that, but and I still like to keep fit, but I haven't found something that takes it's the exhilaration, and it's on the line, and it's you know. For me, hopefully I'll find something, and well, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just keep going like Ken Smith, and he'll set the record, and I'll see if I can beat it.
He is still going and still winning trophies. He's a remarkable driver. You've cottoned onto something there that is an important subject, I think, in many ways for competitors, drivers or riders. I mean, a lot of bike guys in particular really struggle with that, because there is just no obvious replacement for that exhilaration, is there? You're taking that out of your life. It's been a part of your life for 20 plus years, and there is no substitute.
Probably 40 plus years, and everybody's the same when you get to the stage, because you started in single digits, and you know, ending in well, if you had the luxury of ending in late double digits. But yeah, it's you know, and the bike guys are even crazier. I think the car guys are out there, but the bike guys are even more. And I tell you what, every bike guy I've met, doesn't matter if it's Doohan, Simon Crayford, Darryl, they're such nice guys, you know, and great company, but out there, but they're just great people. And I think it's because they enjoy life. You know, they also know how bad things are when they can turn, and so they enjoy every moment. I think that's most important.
You and I share a little complaint, and that is we get hay fever. And you have... We're sitting on hay bale talking. And to combat this, when you were mowing on your property, on your ride-on mower, you did something different. There is photographic evidence I have been sent of this. Just describe for my listeners how you best combat hay fever on the ride-on mower.
Well, yeah, luckily, it was big enough property that not everybody could see it from the road. And so, of course, it was putting oxygen into a full-face helmet and sealing off the bottom. And
just to clarify, you use your ride-on mower with a full-face helmet. Is that correct?
That is correct, with an oxygen tank in the back, feeding oxygen into me, so I couldn't smell a damn thing. And that was the only way that I'm too tight to get someone to mow the lawn. So Patricia said, "Get somebody to mow the lawn." No, I'll do it. Plus, of course, it was a big ride-on lawnmower, which it's the only way I could get some satisfaction. Otherwise, you know what hay fever's like. You block up, you can't breathe. It's a horrible thing when you get it. So there's a way around everything.
There is a way around everything. Righto. Your proudest moment of your career, the thing that is at the top of a very impressive list of things that you've done, and perhaps the toughest moment as well. Reflect on those.
Well, firstly, getting married to Patricia and having my two beautiful daughters is top of the list, way above the career stuff. As far as career goes, I mean, the toughest... when you're hopping into cars for the first time, it's always unknown. It's a little bit like this March that I'm driving now. Luckily I've had a few goes at it, but I'm starting. It takes a while, but when you've got to put it all on the line and you don't know the car, you don't know what you're driving, you don't know the mechanical history, you put in a lot of faith in people, and it is a people game. You have to put your faith in it. But for the scariest, probably the scary. I mean, the accident's always scary. But I tell you, the worst one I had was I drove a Mack truck at Pukekohe back in the win days, when you could drive cars with jandals. I come, hairpin out, coming up over the mountain, and all of a sudden the throttle jammed. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? Yeah. But the throttle stuck on this big truck. I'm not talking a Mack, a big, I don't know, 5 ton, whatever it is. It was set for racing, but it opened, and I had my foot on the brake and the clutch, but it just, once it went off the track, it had a mind of its own and slammed into the, I think about how lucky I was, it slammed into the bank and run along the bank on its side and come to an end. And, here I was just sitting in a seat, funny little seat belts, and I remember when it came to an end, I thought, I'm never going to drive a truck again. I swear I'm never going to drive a truck again. That was my big warning, and to this day I've never driven a racing truck again. Yeah, but it was just, because it was so big, so heavy, the inertia, and it happened so slow, it's, I'm going to die. Oh, no, I'm not. Oh, I'm going to die. Oh, no, I'm not. And on it went. So scariest have to be at this, still, even after all my accidents. The good part about the accidents they happened really quick. This one was really slow. Yeah.
Best piece of driving advice. You mentioned your daughters there a moment ago. What's the driving advice that Dad has?
Slow down. It's all I ever hear myself saying. Amelia, slow down. Amelia, slow down. Oh my God.
Are you a good passenger? No.
Well, I have got my hand on the handbrake, and for 100 kilometres when we're driving, I'm always leaning to the right. So I guess the answer's no on that one. But she's a great little driver. It's just. This is funny. And I'm saying to her, slow down, and she looks in the mirror and she sees somebody catching her from behind on the road, so she speeds up. I said, what are you doing? She said, the car behind's catching. So it's going to be I can't see her getting a full licence, to be honest, because if I'm not in the car and the instructor's there, God knows what speed she's going to be doing. But yeah, so it's a funny little story.
Determined like a dad. It's been tremendous to look back over your career. You've done some phenomenal things. Congratulations on those. I know ultimately stopping was a very, very difficult thing to do, but it is great that you can come to an event like this and still have an outlet and still enjoy some cars. Great to catch up. Thanks, you, Paul.
Steve. I really appreciate it. Look, brought back some great memories, things I'd forgotten about myself, and once again, time takes care of a lot of things. When you're in your most competitive, you never have the time to look around you and take it in, because you're always thinking about the next thing. So I'm enjoying what I did. Would I have liked to have done better? Absolutely, but I'm proud of what I've done, and I'm proud that I always gave it my best shot.
Rusty's Garage is written and presented by me, Greg Rust. Series producer and editor is Alex Mitchell. Audio production by Darcy Thompson.
Listener.